Everyone watched the billionaire sink, but only the poorest woman on the shore decided his life was worth getting wet for. The late afternoon sun painted Lake Evergreen with shimmering bands of gold as hundreds of guests gathered for the annual Whitmore Foundation charity celebration just outside Seattle. Elegant white tents lined the waterfront. A jazz quartet played softly beneath fluttering banners, and reporters drifted from one interview to another, hoping to capture a perfect photograph of Logan Whitmore, the 38-year-old heir to one of America's largest family fortunes. To the public, Logan represented resilience. After a devastating accident years earlier left him unable to walk, he had become an admired advocate for accessibility while quietly carrying the weight of expectations placed upon the only son of the Whitmore family. Cameras loved his smile. Investors trusted his name. Very few people ever wondered how lonely success could become when everyone saw the fortune before they saw the man. A few hundred feet away, Maya Carter hurried toward the employee parking lot after finishing a double shift at Harbor Lights restaurant. At 29 years old, she had spent the entire day carrying heavy trays, refilling coffee cups, and smiling through aching feet because every extra hour meant another payment toward her younger brother's college tuition. Her black apron was folded neatly over one arm, and a small paper bag holding her untouched dinner rested in her hand. She noticed the music drifting across the lake and smiled for a brief moment, grateful for a peaceful evening before heading home. Suddenly, the calm atmosphere shattered. A sharp gasp rippled through the crowd. Several heads turned toward the long wooden dock extending over the water. Logan had paused near the edge to greet donors while maneuvering his wheelchair across decorative planks that had become unexpectedly slick from a light afternoon mist. One wheel slipped. The chair tilted. For one impossible second, time appeared to freeze. Then the chair rolled beyond the edge, disappearing into the dark blue water below. The splash echoed across the lake louder than the music. Conversation stopped instantly. Crystal glasses were lowered. Expensive phones rose into the air as shocked guests struggled to understand what had happened. Some shouted for security. Others screamed for emergency services. Several people rushed toward the dock but froze when they reached the edge, staring helplessly into the water where widening circles spread across the surface. Logan could not immediately free himself beneath the lake. Every passing heartbeat felt heavier than the last. Maya dropped her paper bag before she even realized she had made the decision. The folded apron slipped from her arm onto the grass as she sprinted toward the shoreline without asking who had fallen or why everyone else remained motionless. She ignored the expensive shoes sinking into damp soil, ignored frightened voices calling for trained responders, and ignored the fear that naturally tells people to wait for someone else. She reached the dock, caught one brief glimpse of the struggling figure beneath the water, drew a single determined breath, and leaped forward while the entire crowd stood frozen, watching the one person with almost nothing become the only person willing to risk everything. The cold water closed over Maya's shoulders with breathtaking force, stealing the warmth from her body in an instant, but her determination never wavered. She kicked forward through the deep blue water with powerful, steady strokes, her eyes fixed on the faint outline of Logan and the wheelchair slowly descending beneath the surface. Every second mattered. Above the lake, frightened voices blended into a chorus of confusion as guests crowded the dock without knowing how to help. Security guards rushed toward the shoreline, while someone shouted that emergency responders were already on the way. Yet Maya understood a painful truth that no one wanted to admit. Waiting even another minute could be too late. She reached Logan and immediately realized the challenge before her. The chair had become heavier under the water, and Logan's movements were growing weaker as he struggled to free himself. Fear flickered across his face, but when he saw Maya, another emotion appeared beside it. Hope. Without wasting a single motion, Maya signaled for him to remain calm. She carefully released the safety belt that had trapped him, using both hands while fighting the gentle current that pushed against them. The buckle finally gave way. Logan drifted free, but his body remained difficult to control beneath the water. Maya wrapped one arm securely around him and pushed upward with every ounce of strength she possessed. The distance to the surface felt endless. Her lungs burned. Her muscles trembled. She refused to let go. At last they broke through the surface together. Logan drew a desperate breath as Maya supported his head above the water, encouraging him with a calm voice that somehow rose above the panic surrounding them. Several members of the security team hurried into the shallow edge of the lake and helped pull both of them safely onto the dock. The crowd stepped back, creating space as medical volunteers rushed forward. Maya knelt beside Logan, whose breathing was uneven but gradually becoming steadier. She spoke gently, reminding him to stay focused and keep breathing while trained personnel checked his condition. A long moment passed before Logan slowly opened his eyes. The first face he saw was not a television camera, a family member, or a corporate executive. It was the exhausted waitress whose uniform was soaked, whose hands shook from the cold, and whose expression held nothing except quiet concern for a stranger. Relief swept across the dock. Applause erupted from every direction, followed by grateful tears and whispered prayers from people who had moments earlier feared the worst. Reporters instinctively lifted their cameras, searching for the dramatic image that would dominate tomorrow's headlines. But Maya quietly stepped backward before anyone noticed her. She retrieved her folded black apron from the grass, now damp around the edges, brushed away the dirt, and slipped it over her arm once more. As paramedics continued examining Logan and family advisors surrounded the billionaire heir, Maya turned toward the parking lot. She had no speech prepared, no expectation of recognition, and no desire to become the center of attention. She simply believed that when another human being needed help, you helped. Behind her, Logan weakly lifted his head and searched the growing crowd with uncertain eyes, hoping to find the woman who had given him a second chance. But by the time he looked beyond the flashing cameras, she was already walking quietly toward her aging sedan, disappearing into the evening like someone who believed the greatest acts of courage never needed an audience. Maya drove home with the windows slightly open, allowing the cool evening air to dry the last traces of lake water still clinging to her hair. Her old sedan rattled gently along the familiar streets, and the paper bag containing the dinner she never had time to eat rested quietly on the passenger seat. The events at the lake already felt strangely distant. She had not stopped to speak with reporters. She had not left her name with anyone from the foundation. In her mind, the day had simply become one more unexpected chapter in a life that rarely slowed down long enough to celebrate anything. The next morning arrived before sunrise. Maya tied back her curls, buttoned her clean white shirt, fastened her black apron, and returned to Harbor Lights restaurant exactly as she had every other workday. The smell of fresh coffee filled the dining room while early customers settled into booths overlooking the marina. Her manager thanked everyone for arriving on time, completely unaware that one of the servers standing quietly among them had become the reason one of the country's best-known business heirs was still alive. Meanwhile, nearly every television station in Seattle opened with dramatic footage from the charity event. Helicopter cameras replayed the crowded dock. News anchors praised the rapid response of emergency teams and discussed Logan Whitmore's remarkable recovery. Commentators speculated about the accident, questioned safety procedures, and interviewed guests who admitted they had been too shocked to react. Yet one question remained unanswered. Who had been the first person to jump into the lake? The blurry cell phone videos captured only a fast-moving figure entering the water before disappearing beneath the surface. Reporters called the unidentified rescuer a mystery hero. Social media filled with theories. Some believed it had been an off-duty firefighter. Others insisted it was a member of Logan's security team. Not one person guessed that she was carrying breakfast plates to customers only a few miles away. Logan spent the morning at a private rehabilitation center undergoing routine examinations. His physicians assured him that he was recovering well, but his thoughts never left the woman whose calm eyes had been the last thing he remembered before reaching safety. Every visitor who entered his room wanted to discuss the foundation gala, the financial markets, or the media attention surrounding the accident. Logan politely answered their questions, yet every conversation ended with one of his own. Had anyone identified the waitress who saved him? The answer was always the same. No one knew her name. His family hired investigators, contacted event organizers, and reviewed guest lists, believing the rescuer must have attended the charity celebration. Security footage only deepened the mystery because Maya had arrived from the employee parking area after finishing work at the nearby restaurant and had quietly disappeared before anyone thought to stop her. Across town, Maya smiled warmly as she refilled coffee for an elderly couple celebrating their 50th wedding anniversary. She laughed with a little boy who proudly ordered pancakes by himself for the first time. She thanked every customer who left even a small tip because each dollar mattered. Not once did she mention the lake. Not once did she hint that the headlines filling every television screen around the restaurant were telling the story of the man she had pulled back from despair. Sometimes the greatest acts of courage leave no signature, and sometimes the person the whole world is searching for is standing only a few feet away, wearing a simple black apron and asking whether anyone would like another cup of coffee. 3 days passed, yet Logan Whitmore found himself thinking less about the accident and more about the quiet woman who had disappeared before anyone could even thank her. Every morning began with reports from his executive team, updates from the foundation, and reminders about interviews he was expected to give. Every conversation eventually returned to the same unanswered question. Had anyone found the waitress? His private security team reviewed surveillance footage from nearby businesses, spoke with event staff, and traced the route taken by employees who had left work that evening. Finally, one small detail changed everything. A parking camera captured Maya walking across the street from Harbor Lights restaurant only minutes before she reached the lake. Logan immediately asked his driver to take him there. He insisted on going without reporters, photographers, or company executives. He did not want another public appearance. He wanted a private conversation with the woman who had changed his life. Just before the lunch crowd arrived, Harbor Lights bustled with its usual rhythm. Fresh coffee filled the air while plates moved quickly between the kitchen and dining room. Maya balanced a tray of sandwiches with practiced ease, greeting every customer with the same genuine smile she offered every day. She never expected the black luxury SUV that slowly pulled into the parking lot. When Logan entered the restaurant in his wheelchair, the room grew unusually quiet. Several customers immediately recognized him from the news. The restaurant manager hurried forward, assuming one of the city's wealthiest families had arrived for a business meeting. Logan politely thanked him before asking a simple question. "Does Maya Carter work here?" The manager looked surprised but pointed toward the dining room. Maya turned as she heard her name. For a brief moment, neither of them spoke. Logan recognized the same calm eyes that had looked at him beneath the evening sky beside the lake. Maya recognized the man whose life had become the center of every television broadcast during the past several days. She walked over with the same steady confidence she had shown in the water. "I am glad to see you are doing well," she said warmly. Logan smiled for what felt like the first genuine smile since the accident. "I have been looking everywhere for you." Customers quietly watched from their tables, sensing they were witnessing something meaningful. Logan thanked her sincerely, explaining that no amount of gratitude could fully express what she had done. He reached into a leather folder and gently placed a certified check on the table between them, an amount large enough to change almost anyone's life. Maya looked at it for only a second before sliding it back toward him. Her voice remained respectful but unwavering. "I did not jump into that lake because of your last name or your bank account. I jumped because another human being needed help." Logan looked at her with quiet disbelief. Very few people had ever refused anything he offered, especially something so valuable. Maya continued with a gentle smile that carried more wisdom than pride. "You do not owe me your fortune. The only thing I hoped for that day was that you would have another tomorrow." Those words settled over the room with remarkable silence. For the first time in years, Logan realized he was sitting across from someone who saw neither a billionaire nor an heir. She simply saw a person, and somehow that simple truth carried more weight than every fortune his family had ever built. Maya expected the unusual visit to become nothing more than a memory, but Logan left Harbor Lights carrying questions that no financial report could answer. During the drive back to his office overlooking downtown Seattle, he stared through the window instead of reviewing contracts. Every person around him assumed he would soon forget the waitress who had refused a fortune, yet her quiet words continued echoing in his mind. She had looked directly at him without admiration, fear, or expectation. She had treated him exactly as she would have treated anyone else. That simple honesty fascinated him more than any business proposal ever had. A week later, Logan returned to the restaurant alone once again. This time he arrived during the late afternoon, when the dining room was nearly empty. Maya smiled politely as she poured him a cup of fresh coffee, speaking with the same warmth she offered every customer. Their conversation began with ordinary topics. She asked how his recovery was progressing. He thanked her again for saving his life. Before long, their discussion drifted beyond the lake and into the lives they rarely shared with strangers. Logan admitted that people often assumed wealth erased every hardship. Maya quietly replied that people frequently believed poverty erased every dream. Neither statement carried bitterness. They simply reflected two very different worlds. Over the following weeks, Logan found reasons to stop by Harbor Lights whenever his schedule allowed. Sometimes he ordered lunch. Sometimes he stayed only long enough for coffee. Slowly, he learned pieces of Maya's story without her ever asking for sympathy. She worked double shifts because her younger brother, Jordan Carter, was the first person in their family accepted into a respected engineering program. Tuition was expensive, and Maya refused to let financial obstacles force him to abandon his education. She also visited her mother every weekend at a rehabilitation center after a serious illness had limited her mobility. Medical bills remained a constant challenge, but Maya never complained. She simply worked one shift after another, believing steady effort accomplished more than self-pity. Logan listened far more than he spoke. For perhaps the first time in his adult life, he realized how little he understood about the daily sacrifices made by people whose names never appeared in magazines or annual reports. One rainy evening after Maya finished work, Logan asked whether he could drive her home. She hesitated before accepting, not because of the luxury vehicle waiting outside, but because she wanted to be certain he understood that kindness did not create obligation. As they arrived at her modest apartment building, Logan noticed peeling paint on the railings, bicycles chained beside the entrance, and children laughing as they played basketball in a small parking lot. The apartment itself was clean, welcoming, and filled with family photographs rather than expensive furniture. Jordan sat at the kitchen table surrounded by engineering textbooks, while Maya's mother smiled warmly from her favorite chair near the window. They welcomed Logan with homemade soup and genuine hospitality that no amount of money could purchase. As the evening came to an end, Logan quietly looked around the little apartment once more. It contained very little by financial standards, yet it overflowed with gratitude, perseverance, and love. Driving away beneath the soft glow of the streetlights, he understood something that years inside boardrooms had never taught him. Maya had not only rescued him from the lake. Without realizing it, she had begun rescuing him from a life measured only by wealth instead of by the people whose quiet courage made every ordinary day extraordinary. The friendship that had begun with a single courageous decision slowly transformed both of their lives in ways neither of them had expected. Logan no longer measured every day by stock prices, acquisition meetings, or quarterly reports. Instead, he found himself paying closer attention to the people whose names rarely appeared on organizational charts. He started arriving early at company offices, greeting receptionists, custodians, security officers, and cafeteria employees with genuine interest. At first, everyone assumed the change would fade after a few weeks. Instead, it became part of who he was becoming. Maya never tried to influence his decisions or lecture him about responsibility. She simply lived according to values she had practiced long before they met. She remembered birthdays, thanked every cashier by name, and always returned shopping carts instead of leaving them in parking spaces. Logan noticed these quiet habits and slowly realized that character was revealed far more often through ordinary moments than dramatic speeches. One afternoon, Maya accepted Logan's invitation to visit Whitmore Industries headquarters. The glass tower overlooked the Seattle skyline, and employees moved through polished hallways with impressive efficiency. Logan introduced Maya to department leaders without mentioning the lake until someone recognized her from recent news reports. She smiled politely and quickly changed the subject, making it clear she preferred conversations about people rather than praise. As they toured the building, Maya noticed something that most executives overlooked. A maintenance employee struggled to open a heavy supply room door while balancing several boxes. Before anyone else reacted, Maya stepped forward to help. Logan immediately joined her. The employee looked surprised that the company's future chairman had paused his schedule for such a simple task. That brief moment lingered in Logan's mind long after the meeting ended. Later that week, he requested confidential reports about employee satisfaction, accessibility, and workplace culture. The numbers were impressive on paper, but conversations with staff revealed concerns that spreadsheets had never captured. Some employees felt invisible despite years of loyal service. Others believed leadership rarely listened unless a problem affected profits. Logan recognized something uncomfortable. He had spent years trying to become an effective business leader while rarely asking the people closest to the work how they experienced each day. Inspired by Maya's example, he began hosting monthly listening sessions where every employee, regardless of position, could speak openly. Ideas once ignored quickly led to practical improvements throughout the company. Accessibility upgrades expanded across every office. Educational scholarships were introduced for employees and their families. Emergency assistance programs were strengthened for workers facing unexpected hardships. None of those changes appeared because consultants demanded them. They began because one waitress had quietly demonstrated that seeing people was more important than impressing them. Maya continued working at Harbor Lights restaurant despite several generous job offers from other companies. She told Logan that purpose could not be measured by job titles alone. She enjoyed serving people, and she believed dignity belonged in every profession. Logan respected that decision completely. He stopped trying to repay her with money because he finally understood what she had been teaching him from the beginning. Gratitude was not proven by writing checks. It was proven by becoming the kind of person whose actions honored the gift of a second chance. Without ever planning to become a teacher, Maya had guided one of the wealthiest men in America toward a lesson that no university, boardroom, or fortune had ever been able to provide. As autumn settled over Seattle, the changes inside Whitmore Industries became impossible to ignore. Employees who had once believed senior executives existed behind closed doors now found Logan walking through departments without an entourage, stopping to ask thoughtful questions and remembering names that had previously gone unnoticed. The atmosphere inside the company slowly shifted from quiet distance to genuine conversation. Managers were encouraged to spend time listening before making decisions, and new mentoring programs connected experienced employees with young people just beginning their careers. When board members asked what had inspired such an unexpected transformation, Logan simply smiled and replied that the greatest lessons rarely came from the most expensive classrooms. One morning, he invited Maya to join him at the opening of the Whitmore Community Initiative, a new foundation dedicated to expanding water safety education, improving accessibility around public parks and lakes, and providing emergency response training for local communities. Logan insisted that the project should never focus on celebrating him or the accident. Instead, he wanted it to remind people that ordinary citizens could save extraordinary lives simply by choosing courage over hesitation. Maya accepted the invitation only after he assured her that she would not be expected to stand on a stage or become the center of attention. During the event, children practiced water safety skills with trained instructors while families explored adaptive recreation equipment designed for people with physical disabilities. Volunteers from every neighborhood worked side by side, proving that compassion did not depend upon income, education, or social status. Watching the families enjoy the day, Maya quietly admitted that this was a better use of Logan's gratitude than any check he had ever tried to give her. Logan nodded, realizing she had once again guided him without asking for credit. The foundation soon expanded beyond Seattle. Scholarships supported future lifeguards and emergency medical volunteers. Grants helped install accessible docks, ramps, and safety equipment at lakes across Washington state. Community organizations partnered with schools to teach young people that knowing how to help someone in danger could become one of the most valuable skills they would ever learn. Every new project reflected a simple belief that one brave decision could inspire thousands more. Despite growing public curiosity, Maya continued living much as she always had. She still worked at Harbor Lights restaurant, still greeted regular customers by name, and still spent weekends with her mother and brother. Journalists occasionally requested interviews, but she politely declined nearly all of them. She believed that if people remembered anything about the story, it should be the importance of helping others rather than the identity of the person who had done it. Logan respected that choice completely. Instead of placing Maya's photograph on promotional materials, he instructed his foundation to highlight the work itself and the volunteers who made it possible every day. The more he learned from Maya's quiet example, the more he understood that true leadership was measured not by how many people recognized your face, but by how many lives became better because of your decisions. Looking across the crowded community event as children laughed beside the water in complete safety, Logan realized that the rescue had never truly ended on the day they reached the dock. It continued every time someone chose kindness instead of comfort, service instead of recognition, and courage instead of standing still while waiting for someone else to act. Nearly 1 year after the afternoon that changed both of their lives, the Whitmore Foundation prepared for its largest annual charity gathering. Leaders from business, education, healthcare, and community organizations filled a grand ballroom overlooking Elliott Bay. News outlets described the evening as a celebration of innovation and public service, but only a handful of people knew that Logan had quietly planned something far more personal. Throughout the day, he reviewed his remarks again and again, deleting polished corporate language until only honest words remained. For the first time in his career, he did not want to impress an audience. He wanted to tell the truth. Maya almost declined the invitation when it arrived. She had never been comfortable attending elegant events where expensive gowns and tailored suits seemed so far removed from her ordinary life. Logan assured her that she would not be expected to make a speech or stand in front of cameras. She eventually agreed, choosing a simple navy blue dress that reflected the same quiet dignity she carried everywhere else. Her mother and Jordan encouraged her to go, reminding her that she had earned nothing less than an evening free from double shifts and long hours on her feet. As the program unfolded, awards were presented, charitable milestones were announced, and generous donations were recognized with enthusiastic applause. Then Logan wheeled himself to the center of the stage. The ballroom gradually fell silent. Instead of speaking about profits, investments, or future expansion, he looked across the audience until his eyes found Maya seated near the back of the room. He smiled gently before beginning. He explained that many people believed leadership was about giving orders, building companies, or accumulating influence. He admitted that he had once believed the same thing. Then he told the story of the evening when hundreds of people watched in shock, while one exhausted waitress, still wearing her work apron, chose to act without hesitation. He described how she disappeared before anyone could thank her, refused every financial reward, and continued serving breakfast and coffee as though nothing extraordinary had happened. The room listened in complete silence. Logan paused before speaking the words that mattered most. He said that the greatest gift Maya had given him was not another chance to live. It was another chance to become the man he should have been long before they met. Many guests quietly wiped away tears. Others lowered their heads as they reflected on people in their own lives whose quiet kindness had gone unnoticed. Logan then invited Maya to join him on the stage. She hesitated for only a moment before walking forward. When the applause filled the ballroom, she looked genuinely surprised because she had never sought recognition. Logan presented her with no oversized check and no symbolic trophy. Instead, he announced the creation of the Maya Carter Fellowship, a permanent scholarship supporting students who demonstrated compassion, community service, and courage regardless of financial background. The scholarship would be funded every year through the Whitmore Foundation, ensuring that the values Maya had lived by would continue opening doors for future generations. Standing beneath the warm lights beside the man whose life she had once quietly saved, Maya realized that kindness had a remarkable way of traveling farther than anyone could ever predict. One simple decision beside a quiet lake had become a legacy that would continue changing lives long after the applause faded into memory. 5 years later, the story that had begun beside a quiet lake had become something far greater than either Logan Whitmore or Maya Carter could have imagined. The Maya Carter Fellowship had already helped hundreds of students attend college, complete professional training, and return to their own neighborhoods determined to serve others with the same quiet compassion that had inspired the program. Many of those young people had never met Maya personally, yet they carried her example into classrooms, hospitals, engineering firms, fire departments, schools, and community organizations across the country. Jordan Carter graduated with honors in engineering and accepted a position designing accessible public spaces, determined to create parks, sidewalks, and waterfronts where people of every physical ability could move with confidence and dignity. Maya's mother regained enough strength to enjoy afternoon walks through one of the renovated lakeside parks supported by the Whitmore Foundation, often smiling as families gathered there without realizing how closely that peaceful place was connected to her own daughter's courage. Maya herself remained exactly the person she had always been. She eventually became the community outreach director for the foundation only after years of gentle encouragement from Logan, and she accepted the role for one simple reason. It allowed her to help more people than she ever could alone. She still greeted volunteers by name, still arrived early for every event, and still believed that listening carefully was often the greatest gift one person could offer another. Logan continued leading Whitmore Industries with a different definition of success than the one he had inherited. Financial growth remained important, but every major decision was measured against a new question. Would this improve people's lives or merely increase numbers on a report? That question changed the direction of the company, strengthening employee support programs, expanding educational partnerships, and proving that lasting prosperity and human dignity could grow together rather than compete with one another. On a bright spring afternoon, Logan and Maya returned to the same lakeside dock where everything had begun. The weather was calm, children laughed nearby, and sunlight shimmered across the water that had once nearly separated one life from another forever. A small bronze plaque had been installed along the walkway, not bearing Maya's name alone or Logan's accomplishments, but a simple message for every visitor who paused long enough to read it. It reminded them that courage often belongs to ordinary people, that kindness rarely announces itself before it acts, and that one selfless decision can change generations yet to come. They stood together in comfortable silence, neither feeling the need to revisit every memory because the evidence of that day now surrounded them in living form. Families enjoyed safer parks. Students pursued brighter futures. Employees worked inside a culture shaped by respect instead of distance. Communities discovered that compassion could spread farther than fear ever could. Logan finally broke the silence with quiet gratitude, telling Maya that he had once believed she had saved his life for a single afternoon. Now he understood she had given him an entirely different life to live. Maya smiled with the same calm humility that had always defined her and replied that every person receives moments when they can choose to help someone else, and the real miracle is not that one person acts, but that others continue passing that kindness forward. As they looked across the peaceful water together, the greatest legacy of that unforgettable day was no longer the rescue itself. It was the countless lives transformed because one exhausted waitress believed that every human life was worth saving, and one grateful man chose to spend the rest of his own life proving that her faith had never been misplaced.